Hi there, students. I was asked to explain the difference between housing, accommodation and lodging. And the first thing I thought with these, well, housing is long term. If you are housed somewhere, maybe you stay there 10 years or all your life. Lodging is more temporary, but it's still for a period of time. So when you go to university, perhaps you lodge in somebody's house. You rent a room from them and you become a lodger, and you live there for 3 months, for 6 months. And lodging is more normally is where you rent a room or you rent accommodation from somebody on a medium term basis. Accommodation, to me, accommodation is what you get when you go on holiday. So I went to Ibiza for a week, and the package included hotel accommodation. The accommodation was deluxe. It was really good quality. The government are providing temporary accommodation for people who have lost their houses in the flood. So housing is long term, lodging is medium term, and accommodation I think is short term, but accommodation can be medium term as well. Okay, but accommodation can be for just one night. How long do you need accommodation for? One night, please. I'm going to lodge here for a couple of months, and they housed me so that I can live here forever. So, for example, council housing. This is providing somewhere for people to live, whereas temporary lodgings or temporary accommodation. Okay, so housing. Housing can be all of that, the houses that there are, the affordable housing, the housing stock. Accommodation is a place to stay in for a night or for several nights. Accommodation talks about living quarters. So very often, if you go on a cruise ship, your accommodation will be a cabin. You have first class accommodation, or you could have accommodation in a train that went a long way. You have maybe a sleeping compartment, or just a bed where there are various different beds. This is accommodation. Accommodation is somewhere to sleep the night. A backpacker's hostel is accommodation. Yeah, it's not really lodging. Yeah, okay, accommodation for the night. Whereas lodging is somewhere where you're going to live and study for a period of time. Okay, so there is clearly a difference. Furnished accommodation, rooms in a house. So housing, the buildings where people live, a housing shortage, a place to live, a dwelling, and then lodging, temporary lodging, the room and board, but for most normally for more than just one night, for a couple of weeks, for example, and then accommodation. Okay, accommodation is a temporary place to live. So there is clearly a difference. Housing, the buildings where people live, there's a housing shortage. Accommodation, just a place to stay. There's accommodation for 300 patients in the hospital. And then lodging, a temporary place to stay. So the price includes board and lodging. Board, food, and lodging, a place to stay. And this is really the difference. My lodgings at university were on the edge of town. My house is where I live, and the accommodation is something that's very temporary. So housing, flats and houses considered all together. Accommodation, a room, a group of rooms, a building where people stay, in, for example, in a hotel. And then lodging, a place to stay for a period of time, for the medium term. And I think that's really the difference between these: short term, medium term, and long term. Okay, and that's how it goes. Let's see. House is neutral formality, 5 informality, use absolutely anywhere. From Proto-Germanic husa, meaning a house or a place to live. Accommodation from Latin accommodatio, adapt. I think the place to live is probably somewhat later. And then lodging, from to lodge, from Proto-Germanic laub, a leaf, or the leaf of a plant. Housing, 5 informality. Accommodation, 5 informality. Lodging, 5 informality. Use them all anywhere.